Hello, and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guildhouse. This is a weekly podcast in which I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the tabletop, RPG, and surrounding space. And this week, I'm delighted to be joined by the HTTPaladin themselves. Paladin, hello. How are we doing this fine afternoon?
I'm recovering. I was sick all of last week, swimming in NyQuil and Theraflu. So this week is incredibly better because I'm coherent for the first time in like a week.
Sometimes I must admit there is those aspects though when you have those kind of ill weeks, that kind of lucidity that you have kind of has your best creative moments.
I got some stuff in the fires now because of it, but I don't know. I'd much rather know when it's daytime.
Like that, it's not the case of it's definitely not healthy to kind of shape your whole kind of creative process around a decent amount of NyQuil. But when your body is like, I need some time, you might as well make the most of it and get those projects in the fire. Well, no, awesome. Well, I guess let's not mess around. Let's kind of dive straight into this. And sure. Kind of for the people listening, then Paladin is like, what's some of the things you've been working
on? Fixing my sleep cycle, I guess, but more seriously, I'm working on a couple of solo journaling games and some more 5e content because I need to pay bills. With Sina Una finally finished and out there, I have a lot of time on my hands again.
So with Sina Una, it was again quite a kind of long scale project, I imagine. And was it you were one of the kind of co-directors behind it?
It was.
If you don't mind me asking, what was that kind of the ordeal from start to finish, project scope?
Well, I got brought on as just the graphic designer for it because I needed a few bucks, and much of my life, it's gotten completely out of control, to the point where people know me almost strictly for that and that alone. I'm so sorry. I'm still getting over the cold.
No, it's by means.
But I joined as just the graphic designer, and then it kind of escalated from there to being co-director. And originally, the book was supposed to be maybe 2 classes, 1 island, and a handful of monsters. And I don't know, we were having a talk, and I was talking about how we should probably have some more stuff for people to engage with, so that people can latch onto the book, and it kind of escalated into what it is. The downside to that is that whenever I'm not working on a project that is going to be 300 plus pages, it just feels small to me.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so how many pages was it?
Grand total 336.
Wow. I must admit. So was it? Wait, let me switch to the tab. I've got the tab open, and in the kind of description, it promotes over 250 pages. You could I think you're underselling yourself. You're it's 300 pages.
Oh, we thought we'd be under the 300 mark, but as I'm doing later, I'm oh God, what have I done? I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Oh no, by means, I want it. Cool. This is authentic as it can be.
Good, cool. So the real reaction was, oh shit, oh fuck, oh God, oh fuck, oh shit, oh piss, oh fuck. As the page count went higher and higher.
I guess it's kind of difficult because especially when you're kind of looking at the world or kind of setting guides, there is always that kind of line between how much do we want to kind of give to the DMs and the players to, again, like you said, that kind of ability to kind of latch on, versus how much do we want it to almost be a collaboration where it's the setting guide is a series of hooks and kind of suggestions to the DM to kind of take away and run with. Was the kind of plan with then once you kind of, I guess, hit when you came on and were we need some things for the players to kind of grab on, was it that kind of idea to kind of expand out and I guess kind of what's the phrase I'm looking for? I guess just think about the many different ways that players and DMs kind of approach, I guess, kind of these setting guides.
I mean, I'm kind of the worst person to ask for this because Sina Una expanded very organically. Mm-hmm. My only suggestion was we should have more stuff for players to latch onto, and that became let's have some subclasses too.
Yeah.
We should have more stuff for DMs to latch onto. Okay, so let's expand the world a little bit and make a few more monsters. And somewhere down the line, we realized we can't really do a sequel So we had to include everything we could include into this one book.
Yeah.
Which became like feats and backgrounds and magic items and spells and like 50 plus new monsters and 12 subclasses and 2 whole new classes with each with their own subclasses. And like half the book is just setting.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but also we had planned for a short adventure in the back of the book. Never happened. We just didn't have enough space.
Yeah.
It was already so large.
I'll be honest, like it's that case of that like to fit in, we're like, well, I mean, we can maybe push for 400 pages.
Yeah, no, I'm working on a new book, and I did my usual thing. I'm like, okay, well, my first book was 300 pages, so that must be the normal.
Yeah.
My publisher went, no, it fucking isn't. No, that's not fucking normal. Kudos to you, but what the fuck?
Yeah. So let's pivot to like because when I spoke to you, when I asked you kind of at the start, you mentioned you're working on like 1 or 2 kind of like journaling games, and I'm always kind of fascinated about that kind of like single player kind of contained experiences. Do you want to serve one of the pitches up for one of these games that you're working on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm always fascinated by solo journaling games, just because the idea of playing a game alone when it's not like a video game is so different. Because in games you can cheat, right?
Yeah.
But cheating inherently ruins the experience. If I'm trying to go for like becoming a better Minecraft player, if I turn on creative, I'm kind of lessening my experience to be a better Minecraft player, you know? So solo journaling games, you have to be very, very brutally honest with yourself, which is difficult sometimes. Last year, near the tail end, I lost a very close friend of mine at the tail end of September. And October, November completely disappeared off my radar because I was just locked up in grief. And I started working on this solo journaling game just as a way to kind of process all the things that I was going through.
Yeah.
Which is not a very good sell, admittedly.
No, but that's what I think one of the benefits I kind of have is, at least journaling games, they kind of allow themselves to kind of reflect the kind of emotional range of games. In the same way you had the Minecraft example, you have things like I'm trying to think of a very emotional game on the other end of the spectrum. Like the journeys, or the kind of This War of Mines, the kind of, I guess,
Spiritfarer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think particularly as well the kind of the way you kind of say it, the reflective nature or the self-reflective nature of kind of journaling games is a pretty good opportunity to kind of like, again, like channel or kind of work out how you process those feelings. So what was kind of, I guess, so the kind of, I guess my frame of reference for journaling games is there is I'm blanking myself, the Wretched, which makes use of I was about to say Jenga, but that's trademarked. It's the Tumbling Tower TM. I'm curious about, so what kind of, I guess, game systems did you kind of try to implement within your like journaling game?
None really. I just started working on it and trying to parse through it. The idea that I had in mind of it was the fact that like most people that I know in my daily life, sorry.
No.
Most people I know in my daily life now, who I work with or I'm friends with, have no idea really who I am. Part of it is by design because I enjoy being a very unpredictable person. More and more, whenever I try to explain my past or my history to people, the more and more I just sound like cryptid. And so I'm very, by and large, a really unknown person. People know of me, but people don't really know me personally. Which has 2 effects of like, I can kind of do whatever I want, and it falls within the diagram of things that Paladin probably would do.
Yeah.
But as a side effect of like, people don't really know when I'm joking online. I talk with like full grammar and punctuation. And that is sometimes off-putting to people. It's sometimes scary to people.
I was gonna say, you were describing the exact same problem that people have with me. I'm very much the same. So I'm like, yeah, but yeah, no, sorry, continue.
Yeah. I lost this friend of mine, and I realized that I've known that friend since like middle school. And I don't really talk to people from even high school, let alone people from like 5 years ago. I'm 28 now. And I realized that, this person had a very concrete idea of who I am. There was a reality to that person of who and what I am. And that's gone now. that version of me no longer exists. So I'm trying to explore, when you lose someone, what portion of you is just gone forever?
Yeah, wow. I think I remember floating around a little while ago. There was the idea of there was like a comic which was talking about the idea of like doppelgangers, in the sense that every kind of communication or meeting you have with someone, they're almost essentially creating like a doppelganger of their perception of you.
Yeah.
And you can do things to kind of shape that, but at the end of the day, when you leave and if you never meet them again, they're kind of stuck with that. And yeah, what you're kind of saying kind of touches on a lot of those kind of sentiments. It's and I guess would you say in kind of creating this kind of like through kind of journaling, it has kind of been a kind of a very kind of helpful process for you?
No.
Okay. Oh no.
No, I'm kidding. I thought that'd be a funny way to answer.
Really I appreciate the commitment to be of like, no, I'm actually worse for it. This game is cursed. And
I'm at a point now where the only solution is double the therapy. I'm not sure how to accomplish that, but here we go. Yeah. No, it helps in the sense that like I've been trying to push through it and trying to push around it with other things in my life. I try to do the thing of like, I'll focus on this later on when I have more capacity and I'll work in the meantime, but I just couldn't work. You and I worked on a project together called Diesel.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, and I did a layout for it. And the reason why it took me so long to do layout is I just could not function. I literally start working on it and then just stare at the computer screen for like a good hour. Just locked up. It's awful. I got 2 Kickstarter projects that I'm like finishing up now that was supposed to be done last year, but I physically could not work through it. But kind of just going through the grief in its entirety and kind of embracing it and kind of get to the other side of it. That's what helped overall.
Yeah. And again, first point, again, thank you so much for sharing it. Again, it's kind of, I don't know. I was about to call it like, I want to be careful with my phrasing and stuff like that, but I mean, in terms of like, it is in itself like a beautiful sentiment. Despite the kind of, words are failing me. Do you, I guess, just to do you know what I kind of mean, or am I digging myself a hole here?
Really honest, I have no idea what point you're trying to make.
That's fair. I will just, I will use this as an opportunity to turn it into a segue and
sure.
and pivot away. The other thing you kind of mentioned towards the start is, again, in needing to make that paycheck, pivoting towards some D&D adventures. Did you want to, like, what were some of the kind of concepts that you're playing around with at the moment?
Well, I'm finishing up incantations right now, which conceptually, I guess is kind of showing how some of the sausage is made. I'm making it with Metalweave Games. They're funding everything and whatnot. They're paying us to make it. And it really started off as an idea of like, well, remember ritual spells from 4th edition? What if we had that in 5th edition?
Yeah.
And we have ritual spells in 5th edition, but they're nowhere near the same as they were in 4th edition, where they're like these big bombastic things that anybody could learn. And I thought, cool. Well, so we have this idea of rituals from 4th edition into 5th edition. And that turned into, remember when you were like super into magic as a kid?
Yeah.
How the world felt like very vibrant and like witches and goblins and could be very, very real despite not meeting them. Remember that magic of wonderment and merriment you had as a kid where if someone told you that this magical thing existed, you were like, yeah, fucking does. I wanted to capture that.
Yeah. No, I must admit, I particularly like love the idea of the kind of leaning into that childlike wonder, but then also the fact that from like almost like a mechanical standpoint, the fact that if you look across like movies and films, there's always the idea of like this random group of people who, through no fault around, they conjure some ritual, or that's their kind of whole plan, and they're just everyday people who do this kind of ritual that summons this kind of like greater evil, or does this kind of like body switching spell. I mean, there's every kind of like trope under the sun for like people casting rituals, and kind of giving them the kind of giving them the kind of oomph they kind of deserve is, yeah, I kind of like that. to kind of turn it into a bit of a question, then, what's one of the favorite of your personal favorite rituals that you've kind of put together?
Oh shit. That caused me to think, man.
Sorry.
I'm really trying to think. I just finished the last spell recently, and it took me such a fucking long time to make it.
I mean, maybe not favorite then, but what springs to mind?
No, I literally cannot come to mind anything that I've done. And that is the true error here, where I cannot recall anything I have done, which isn't great, to be perfectly honest.
I think there is something almost like a creative void that sometimes in there's projects where you hit that point where you're just like, I'm kind of done with it, and therefore I retain no information about, oh, I did that thing or I worked on that.
Actually, I remember now. I made a spell called To Grasp the Sun.
Ooh.
And my favorite part about it is that it's completely useless by itself. The whole point of it is that when you cast the spell, you select one other spell to cast, and time stops for you to finish up the spell.
Interesting.
Because some of the casting times on these spells range from 10 minutes to 7 weeks. And I don't know. I like the idea of a spell that worked alongside explicitly with the other spells we were working on.
Yeah. So is it kind of the intention that someone would be kind of casting this ritual with it as a component of another ritual, almost?
You'd cast a spell, time would stop, and you'd select another spell to cast. When you finish up the second spell, this first spell ends.
Oh, I see. So it's like a booster or like an enchantment, or not an enhancement. Sorry.
Kind of a guarantee that you won't be interrupted.
Yeah, I must admit, yeah, but I guess it kind of the idea of the heroes marching up to the scene of a ritual site, and the idea that the ritual they see finish is this time stop ritual, so that they're stuck in time. Then the baddies kind of have the moment to kind of conjure up the other kind of ritual as well. That is a really cool spell, and I like the name. It immediately kind of made me worry that it was going to be something to do with I don't know, grabbing the sun and pulling it towards the planet.
No, I'm not Brendan Mulligan. That's not my jam.
Nice. So also, talking as another kind of segue. One of the other things that you've kind of been working through at the moment is is polyhedral?
Yeah, polyhedral.
Which again, as someone who I spend a decent amount of time interviewing designers and stuff like that. You've kind of gone ahead and kind of putting together a book to chat with a bunch of kind of designers. I just kind of wanted to ask, what did you kind of want to achieve with polyhedral?
Nothing in particular. I just got very frustrated one day working on Sina Una, doing some of the background dev stuff that you never really know about. God, every now and then I'm going to say a word and I'm going to say it weirdly, and it's because I'm trying to suppress a cough in the middle of a word.
No, but I mean, yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I got frustrated doing some of the dev work that no one really warns you about ahead of time on Sina Una. And I tweeted out one day that I'm really frustrated, so I'm going to make this book where I talk to other devs about some of the problems we deal with. And a bunch of my other dev friends were like, yeah, that sounds great. Do it. And I'm like, you fuckers know I'm joking. Originally, the subheader for a polyhedral was a Twitter joke that's gotten completely out of control.
Yeah.
Or a tweet that's clearly gotten out of hand. But it's evolved over time into just kind of removing the veil from the people behind the games that people play. A lot of the time people think you have to be qualified to, or you have to have some kind of training or degree in order to make these things, and you really don't. People are very surprised that Sina Una is my first project. The only qualifications to making this stuff is to just go through and make it.
Yeah. And no, I was gonna say, I really kind of I kind of like when projects kind of, again, it seems like there is a good third of projects that start as those kind of throwaway jokes from Twitter, but then that's sometimes kind of the allure of them. The reason I sometimes when you throw ideas out there into the void of social media, and then you kind of get that reception back of oh, maybe there is, maybe this thing does kind of have some legs. And it's funny how, like, again, talking about like, polyhedral kind of ties back into what you're saying earlier about, you know, pulling behind the curtain and kind of getting to know these kind of developers and stuff like that. I'm curious, like, again, just because, so I again, my podcasts are fairly kind of formulaic. I have my list of questions. Was that kind of approach that you had where you kind of went into each interview with like questions in mind, or was it quite kind of?
I go into it with a couple of questions in mind, but by and large, they're just conversations. Which unfortunately means I talk a lot, which it makes it hell for transcription work. Because like if you don't like hearing yourself talk like I do, having to hear yourself talk for 60, 90 plus hours.
Yeah.
It's a private torment. It's private hell.
Yeah. Wow. So was that literally how some of these kind of discussions were? Again, not, I imagine, my mind went straight to the idea that it was like a bunch of like 1 hour chats and then like a 30-hour chat. But I imagine they kind of all kind of varied in length.
Yeah, they all typically fall around an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we just kind of roam around. Sometimes I'd have a designer who talks left and they would just ramble on at length. Sometimes I would be talking to someone who needs a bit more grounding before they really get into it. But by and large, the thing that I kind of picked up on in it was that people are more inclined to be honest and forthright if they can just talk openly. Because a lot of interviewers that I've found in my time in the sphere will stick to a schedule of interview questions, and as a result, they'll get what they want, but not what they could get.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example. At one point in one interview, me and the other designer are just screeching about our times playing 3.5 D&D. And another one, someone is talking about their upbringing. I didn't explicitly ask, but it's where we got to.
Yeah.
And seeing what people want to talk about or what they veer into when they talk about things is incredibly interesting to me. Because I could definitely be asked questions about like my work ethic or my daily life or my schedule, but I don't have a schedule.
Yeah.
My daily life kind of meanders, but like I could definitely talk about why I fucking hate retail. I could definitely go on and on about why I hate working retail and why I'm never going back again. Or I can definitely talk about that kind of just weird shit and media that I've been taken in.
Yeah, I was going to say. So I just because we're on the topic of that, I have like a retail question that I have a retail story that I haven't been able to tell on this podcast. But rather than just me ramble first, have you got like a retail story?
Yeah. Very fortunately, I worked at a theater during the summer of 2015. Magic Mike XXL came out during that period.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the series?
I'm what's it? It hasn't got Matthew McConaughey in it.
It has Channing Tatum. I don't know what they call it, but it has Channing Tatum in it.
Yeah, either way, just like men, like
Yeah, very, very, very handsome, buff men stripping, and like cool. But also, I work as an usher on the weekdays and as a greeter on the weekends, and sometimes I help with cleaning theaters. You don't know horror like seeing a condom wrapped cucumber.
Yo, oh no!
But you also don't know joy like seeing someone pick it up and ask, "Why is there a condom on this cucumber?"
Those poor innocent souls.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But like shit like that, and like the rampant racism and entitlement in like upper middle class people living in the Midwest, I just can't. I fucking can't sometimes.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you. Like retail is like, so I used to work as essentially like a cashier. And the kind of I don't know what it is. It's just like I'm just here. Like I'm 16 years old. I'm just here to boop items, and I'm here to get you out as quick as possible. And some of the things I had to kind of endure. The weirdest experience I had is the time that I accidentally cost the shop that I was working at. I cost them like £500 because it was late at night. We were just about to close our shop, and these two women come in. And they're trying to buy like 500, like almost like £1,000 worth of like port. So really kind of like expensive, like whiskey and all that kind of thing. And thankfully, because I was kind of like underage, I couldn't scan it through my cashier. So I had to have like my manager come by. And I remember it distinctly because one of the women, they had a gold tooth. And it just, when you just have that memory that always just like sticks into your head during that whole thing. So they put all the port through. They want to pay in cash. So they hand out like in 20s. They place it all down on the table. I take it off them. I count it. And that's when they take it off me a third time, and they count it a third time. So at the moment, I've counted to 1,000. Like 1,000 has been counted to a collective like of 3 times. So I'm just like, okay, whatever it is, there's enough money. I pop the money in the till. And what it turns out is that they want all this port delivered the same night. And apparently it's for their mother-in-law. Again, weird facts that kind of hold on into the story. But I was just like, or my manager was like, sorry, we can't deliver. It's literally closing time. We don't have anyone to literally drive a van out to deliver all this kind of port that you have. So then they were like, forget it. We just kind of want a refund then. But what had happened is in the third time when they caught counting out the money, they'd slipped away some. And into when I put the cash in the till, and then when I gave them their refund, I was giving them some of their money back and some of the money from the till. So I was essentially giving them more money than they kind of came in with. And thankfully, again, I probably would have got in more trouble with it had my manager not been kind of over my shoulder, not noticing anything. But that's my retail story. Again, it's not quite as short and sweet or as kind of cinematic as yours, but I've just it just stands out. I'll never forget that.
It's just frustrating shit that people pull on you. It's it's baffling the kind of, I want to say, callousness people regard people who work in the services industry.
Yeah, geez. Wow. No, hot damn. Well, so to bring it back to polyhedral, I'm curious then, I guess more out of the kind of all the conversations you kind of had. I hesitant to keep asking you kind of like what your favorite is, but I'm curious about like if there were any kind of interviews or discussions that you had that kind of caught you by surprise.
Yeah. I was interviewing the people behind Morkborg.
Interesting, yeah.
And one of them was talking about how, like, when they were making the game, during the night, the writer of the team would be writing about killing people, but during the day he'd be researching how to save people because he's a COVID researcher.
That I must admit, it's almost like the two sides of a coin.
Yeah.
No,
sorry.
No.
But yeah, like that kind of sells exactly because it's just being kind of this funny thing of like, how the fuck does this work out? Trying to think of what else, because it's a lot of interviews.
Yeah, no. So basically, as part of like what I do when I'm not doing like the tabletop RPG stuff is that kind of interviewing people and then for studies and that kind of like academic side of things. So I kind of know the kind of the pain and suffering of sitting through the transcribing. And there's that little thing where as you're kind of going through and you're transcribing something, where you notice that point of like, I should have asked this question here, like, or and it's not until you kind of are out of that moment. It's weird. It's interviewing is a weird process of so much of it is asking the questions, listening, and then also kind of taking, again, I think I kind of described it once as like anytime that kind of you're talking now, my gears are turning of like, okay, well, what do I want to ask next? How do I kind of like connect it to the next thing or bits and bobs? And yeah, there's a reason why anytime I stop the podcast or like end the podcast and stuff like that, my brain turns to goop. I can't I can't think as much. I imagine it was kind of the same for you kind of going through some of these.
Yeah, because during the earlier interviews, I had never interviewed people before, so I was incredibly nervous, and afterwards thinking, I should have done this, should have done that, I should have done this, and I tell people like, I might send you some questions that are honest, that okay, and they always say yeah, because like why wouldn't they say yeah? And I kind of like the imperfection of an interview now, of like, I don't want to have some perfect piece. I want to have a very personal piece. There was an interview very recently with Keanu Reeves, where he just talked about his life in the film industry.
Yeah.
And, you know, the interviewer could have asked a whole bunch of other stuff, clearly, probably, but he didn't. That interview, in my mind, is perfect because it doesn't focus on trying to encompass the entirety of the subject. It encompasses a very human portion of it. And that's what I kind of like about the stuff I've been doing with it, Polyhedral. Like, for example, the second person, I think, very early on at least, I interviewed Matthew Mercer, which, for the record, I don't know who all is going to hear this. I'm going to laugh if Matt does, but Matt is the only one who has had any audio issues.
Really?
Seriously, I don't know what it was, but like his interview was just super, super quiet. It was funny to me that this very high-tech professional is the only one who had an issue with recording. But here's my second ever interview, and I had all these people when I was working on the marketing for Polyhedral tell me, "Why don't you put Matt more? You have Matt on your thing. Push Matt forward. Put it at the top of the list." I'm like, that's not the point, though.
Yeah.
The point isn't Matthew. The point is designers, and that's what Matt is. You know, I interviewed him. I did a second follow-up interview later on. That'll be in the book. But like, I like the imperfection that I had in that first interview, and I like the imperfection that I have with the second interview.
Yeah,
because I'm so unconcerned with sticking to what people keep doing. Because media, by and large, bores the fuck out of me. I'm constantly fighting this battle of not being bored, and the way that some interviews are framed, where they are just a conversation, those are my favorite ones, and so that's what I've been trying to aspire to.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that, looking in hindsight, that's kind of been the format of some of my earlier interviews as well.
Yeah, I guess so. That's one of my favorite things, and is obviously in having the kind of the catalog from your first interviews towards the end. Would you say your interview style had kind of changed over the journey?
Yeah, and that I'm less nervous, and therefore I can focus more on the person.
Yeah.
Like the day and night difference between my first interview and my second interview with Mercer is like night and day.
Yeah. I must admit, I feel like, especially like going into like a new kind of interview thing and having like the second interview, I imagine, of someone as well known as Matt Mercer probably heightens the tension just a little bit.
I mean, early on in my career, I did work with Beetle and Grimm's. And, you know, I finished up one project. I started doing some detail work for another project, and the person in charge of that project was Matthew Lillard. Bill Rear was in charge of me for the first project. Matthew Lillard was in charge of me for the second project. And, you know, we had a conversation, getting to know each other, and talking about where I was at in life, where I was physically located, and what kind of where he was and what he was all about, because he wanted to know who was working for him, you know, which is not a bad thing to want, you know. At the very end, he goes, "Okay, is there anything else you want to ask me?" Which, in hindsight, is a very obvious fucking bait. And I go, "Yeah, you know what? Fuck it, man. I watched Scooby-Doo as a kid a lot, and it made me feel better as a weird kid who wanted to have a dog."
Yeah.
You know, and he says, "You know, I hear you. I understand you. I hear what you're saying. I respect that. I understand. I hear it a lot.
Yeah.
But now we can just be bros who play D&D."
Yeah.
You know? And that was great. Because, like, it's, to me now, he's just Matt, right? He's someone's dad. He does some film stuff. He does some acting stuff. But he's just this fucking dork.
Yeah.
He's just a guy. He's just a lad. Which makes it so weird whenever I'm talking to at conventions, or where people are always like so hyped to see him. When I go on to TikTok and I see like teenagers calling him daddy. It's just so weird, because very clearly in my mind, I was at Last Odyssey in 2019, and my friend Lucia Searsford, who heads up Sina Una, was there handing out some pins, because we both were sponsored to go there by Dungeon Fog. Mm-hmm. In exchange for me writing an essay for them. And I remember him asking for a pin, and her saying, "Well, it is pink," and him going, "You think I can't rock pink?" Like he's just a guy,
Yeah.
and that's all what Mercer is too. Like I used to be like so hyped for Matthew Colville, and like I still appreciate his work, but like I've done work for his company. He's just Matt. And I've had the same thing with Mercer, where it's like, yeah, he's very well respected, he's very well known. He's also just a little fucking nerd.
Yeah,
He's
I guess
just a guy.
I guess it's especially like it's something that like I went through like a similar journey with like Feststein, like trying this podcast was just an excuse for me to kind of chat to cool people, and the nerves you kind of feel, which you do hit that tipping point where you're just like just chat, you know.
It's cathartic in a sense to just talk to people who kind of know what you deal with.
Yeah,
you know,
like. No, sorry. No, please, by all means.
Like we worked on Diesel together, and like I just did layout and stuff, but like seeing y'all insert your humor into different mods and writing was great. Because I have to read all this shit as a layout designer over and over. Yeah. And I don't know, my favorite joke from that book was someone talking about which finger to put a gun into.
Oh yeah. I think that was it was either to be I think the gun that was definitely Cassandra. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Yeah. I'm sure. Again, Diesel is again. Now that we're face to face, I can say, beautiful book. I'm so chuffed with kind of how that all kind of came together, and I'm really kind of chuffed that Steve brought me on to kind of come along for that journey. I did want to ask. So, seeing as we brought up bringing up like Matt Koval, and as a bit of a segue, your contribution to the Arcadius series of books.
Yeah.
I was curious because you did was it a series of like seasonal based subclasses?
Yeah.
I don't know, like what was kind of was this something that you've kind of had kind of like brewing in kind of like home games or anything like that, or was it more just like you saw like the pitch opportunity, you're just like, heck,
well, originally, like I had this idea to make more personal subclasses with the idea of like making the horned one patron very early on in my design career. And I just never did it because I didn't have the money to pay for an artist. And I'm very mindful of presentation being key to anybody engaging with anything you do. You know, like I'm a graphic designer, but mostly because it's my personality, not because like it's my passion. I just had a flood of memes in my head just now. Holy shit!
Oh yeah, with your clip art, frogs.
Yeah. Look, you know, I had this idea for a long while, and I just never did anything with it. And when they asked me to pitch some stuff to them, I thought, well, what about seasonal subclasses? I could do like 4 for an article, and if I'm ever brought on for another one, I could do like a year or two where I have more classes. But you know, I wanted to do very narrative. I always like to do very narrative, heavy, emotional stuff, and this was an avenue for me to do that.
Yeah, I think as well, it is kind of interesting how there is so much emotion kind of almost tied up with the seasons. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if it is different for maybe you across the pond, just because England side we don't have too many seasons.
It feels like y'all have a very fast spring, winter, and summer, and just a permanent, pervasive fall.
Yeah, I think that would be accurate. We're used to things being somewhat brisk, and there's wind, and there's grey, and there's a good chance of rain. I don't know if it falls neatly into that kind of spring, just without all the kind of, I don't know. I was going to call it happiness. I don't want to paint the entirety of the UK as a depressive state of affairs. But no. So I guess okay. Is there like a season that you kind of find yourself having kind of a natural affinity for? Because I must admit, I think I definitely am like a winter person.
I'm pretty much pulled diametrically towards summer and winter. I give no shits about fall. I give no shits about spring.
Yeah.
But summer, I just feel comfortable, and winter, I can't help but overthink everything in my life.
Yeah. I guess, sorry. No, go ahead.
I never celebrated Christmas growing up. So growing up, I just had these 2 weeks off for no apparent reason to me.
Yeah.
I would just be separated from all my friends and classmates for a good 2 weeks, just with my parents playing video games. There's a rapper named Childish Gambino, and I brought this up during the Arcadia talk. And he released an album during winter, and his label was just so opposed to it because it wasn't a Christmas album. But like, he grew up Jehovah's Witness, and they didn't. He grew up not having Christmas and celebrating that kind of holiday, and so he grew up just having a lot of time to himself to think during winter, and that resonated with me. The seasonal subclass, for anybody who isn't familiar, for winter in that article is Wizard, and it's all about hibernation and studying. Because like all throughout winter and even now, like I just hunker down and read a lot.
Yeah. No. Wow. Yeah. No. It's kind of no. It's just fascinating. I don't have anything else to say other than that. It's kind of it's no. Well, okay. Well, then I guess, would you say then that is kind of a good chunk of your kind of creative process is kind of recognizing or trying to find that kind of emotional angle to kind of approach things from?
Yeah, 100%. I am thankful that that growing up, I was always taught emotional intelligence, and not to like push anything down, but just kind of to understand why I'm feeling certain things and kind of embrace what I'm feeling, so that like I didn't let it control me, and B, just kind of understand myself better. I'm very thankful that I got raised up with that, because it definitely helps with like design and storytelling. But everything I do these days is very much punctuated with how I feel through it. Like I write forwards for all the books that I do, for example. And I talk very openly about how I feel about things, why I do certain things, why something might be very emotional. I can't, when I start a project, I can't ever enjoy it unless I make it hyper personal for me.
Interesting.
It's I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
There's I think you can agree with this. There's a plethora of third-party 5th edition content out there right now, and it's very easy to get ignored amidst the noise.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very confident that I can make stuff that is new and unique to people. But part of that is making sure that I am emotionally and artistically invested into it.
Yeah.
The pitch for Incantations was just, hey, what if we had ritual spells for 5th edition? And that became Incantations. Remember when magic was wonderful to you as a kid?
Mm-hmm.
With another project, I'm thinking about what it was like to be, what it's like to be on stage, and how role-playing is on some level theater, with the percentage of it sliding based on whether like streaming or playing personal games, whatever. And tying that to tarot cards, finding some intersection between perceived fate and theater.
Yeah.
I'm working on another book right now where I'm approaching the idea of like, people go wild over very well-made drinks, over cocktails and like microbrews, and I've never heard someone talk so passionately about liquor than I outside of things like football or D&D.
Yeah.
You know, and embracing like fantasy drinks. I had a thread a while ago where I tell people choose a number between 1 and 1,000 on Twitter, and what number they chose, I would read from a spreadsheet I have about some fantasy drink. Finding things that are interesting to me and is typically aligned with finding things that people aren't otherwise doing.
So for the 1,000 link, was that more of a case of like that's just like a spreadsheet that you kind of had open that every now and then you kind of had the idea you would kind of, or was it kind of a good chunk of it was it like literally sitting down, dedicating an hour or so to like, let's see how many kind of like cocktails I can kind of churn through?
I've been playing tabletop games since I was 10. And my father introduced me to D&D when I was 3.
Wow. So
Yeah, so like TTRPGs have always been kind of part of my life, and always people talk about like meals and drinks and whatnot as you are served your food, you get your ale.
Mhm.
Um, but like people don't know what the fuck ale is half the time, and even when they do, it's boring as shit. And you hear people talk so heavily and so dramatically, almost operatically. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to roll with it.
I believe it.
About IPAs and microbrews, and I can't tell the difference, but they're very passionate about it. And I don't know. I feel like that kind of passion can be contagious if conveyed properly. Um, and I've been working on this spreadsheet since I was like 15.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I just had the idea like I have all these ideas for drinks. I'm just not writing them down. And eventually came to this like list of 1,000 drinks.
So to go back to kind of an earlier point as well, that I was again, I wanted to ask about the spreadsheet just because it blows my mind.
Sure.
But you kind of mentioned how again a good chunk of your the way you kind of approach emotions through a project is once you kind of have that lens to kind of view it. So obviously, like looking at the rituals, it's a case of like, okay, yeah, how easy is it sometimes to try and find that lens? Because I imagine, like, obviously, because coming at it from like, I guess, like an emotional standpoint, sometimes there are again multiple perspectives or ways to kind of tackle it. Is it literally just is it just kind of I was unsure if I was trusting your gut or trusting your heart, so my hand went in the middle part of, and I don't know anatomy that well, so trusting yourself.
It's more like trying to find something that makes me feel something in a new way or feel something new entirely. I very much have consumed just a dearth of media in my life. At certain points in my life, some media hits harder than others. I always try and find ways to make things that I'm working on hit me.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound great, mind you. Where it's like, yeah, media has to hurt me, which like it's no, not that. But like I know the feeling of watching a movie for the first time. I know the feeling of listening to a great prog rock album for the first time and just being totally unprepared for it. I like everybody who listens to pop music knows about Dua Lipa, you know, but not everybody knows about Rina Sawayama.
And you had the hook, line, and sinker. I don't.
yeah. And she's great. She's a great recording artist from London. But trying to find ways to get people to feel more, even if it's this in a similar line of thinking as other stuff they've consumed.
Yeah.
Like I've definitely seen people make a bunch of spell books on Kickstarter, where it's like, we have 400 spells, we have 5,000 spells, and all these subclasses and all these items. Check out our book. Incantations is like maybe 50 spells total, and 12 subclasses. But I'm going at it with a way to make it interesting for me.
Yeah.
Which was thinking about growing up. I really truly believed that witches existed. I never saw one.
But that's just how witches are, though, you know.
But I fully believe that they were a part of our world. Like quicksand exists, but I definitely thought it would play a larger role in my life, according to cartoons.
Yeah.
You know, and like, not to say that I'm so closed off to the idea of magic, but like, no one came to my doorstep and said I'm the chosen one. No one said that I was going to save the world. No one said I'm destined for anything great. No one told me that. No one showed me that magic is real. But like cartoons also told me that, like, you know, love is real. You know, cartoons showed me all the time that like traits like loyalty and caring and family are very powerful forces. In the same breath as like telling me, yeah, lightning exists, but you know what's cool too? Respecting your parents, you know, because it's very after school special stuff, right? Like, even though there wasn't, you know, controlled lightning, even though I can't huck a fireball outside of a Molotov, you know, things like love and friendship and family do exist. Just as I get older, I drop understandings of like, teleportation and get more nuanced the ways of like caring for another human being.
I think as well, it just kind of says that obviously looking at everything kind of before as those awe-inspiring moments, like in any sort of like media and stuff. I think it is interesting to say that every kind of medium, whether it is like a series of rituals or adventure or whatever the project is, can have that potential of impact for someone. But it's just kind of going in with the right mindset of like, well, no, you need to cultivate it. You need to treat it with the potential to have if it's inspiring to you, that it's in it. I was about to say it's infectious, but in the nicest sense of the term. Yeah.
There's a guy on YouTube named Captain Christian who he makes these video essays on different things in pop culture. And in his video about Toonami, he talks about how back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, you had like 4Kids TV who would talk about Dragon Ball Z, going, Goku and his friends fight off some pretty nasty dudes in Dragon Ball Z. Whereas with Toonami, it was like Goku faces off against Vegeta in a standoff. One is very patronizing. One actually cares about the medium, because Toonami was full of nerds and people who cared about these stories and cartoons and curated it in such a way to show that they had a passion for these things. And for anybody who watched Toonami growing up and talks about it now, is just so all into the hype of Toonami, because it respectfully showed them things that they are now into. I went into Incantations thinking about how I was so invested into magic like everybody else was. And when we all grew up, we all abandoned these notions of childhood. And I wanted to recapture that for Incantations.
Yeah.
That's all sprawling from just the idea of like, hey, what if we had rituals in 4th edition? From 4th edition in D&D into 5th edition D&D.
But it's like I said, it's that lens. It's like, whatever, regardless of what the project is, it is just finding that kind of like personal lens that kind of, just I was like it enhances it. I was about to call it like cinnamon or like the spice or something. That's a bad analogy. But yeah, no, awesome. So then I guess over everything that you've kind of done then, if you were to, I don't know, this is a question I always kind of like to ask in terms of like a lesson to kind of pass on to like the people kind of listening. But is there a lesson that you've learned through just creating everything that you've created that maybe you wish you'd learned sooner?
I'm trying to think. I guess it's not a succinct piece of advice, but you're going to see a lot of people who make things for all kinds of reasons. There's never any one way to make a certain thing or one way to go about making what you want to make. Some people make a bunch of stuff on DMsGuild and they make a bunch of parody stuff and humor stuff, and some people go into making stuff with an agenda. Finding why you want to make stuff and finding things that you want to make is almost as important as making. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
Finding out why you want to make stuff or why you make stuff is almost as important as making stuff. Because making things without active thought or active care is a good way to make very pointless noise. Figuring out why you create, figuring out the reason behind your need to create, is the way to go about making things that actually last.
I it's one of the things where I always come away like, I disagree. And sometimes it is that kind of reflective journey of just looking in. And I get by leaning into those kind of words. Like once you kind of have that reason, leaning into it again, the products you kind of make coming out of it are that much kind of more personal and kind of reflect your kind of intentions, I suppose. But that's a much less succinct way of saying what you just said. So I'm gonna move on swiftly. It kind of brings around to kind of the kind of wider community as a kind of a whole. Again, working with a number of kind of collaborations kind of all over the place. Would you say there are like someone or like people within the kind of the tabletop RPG community that kind of stand out as points of inspiration with at least your way of approaching projects?
I don't know, honestly, because some people approach their projects in very analytical ways and very serious ways. Some people approach their projects with like a healthy amount of joy and parody in mind, and a lot of people are very focused on themes and central ideas, whereas I approach things in a very, what's the word I want to use here? Fairy tale emotional manner.
Mm.
It's very hard to summarize or predict my decision-making process when it comes to the things I create or why I make things that I want to do. So finding anybody similar is like trying to find X object in Y stack where you don't know what you're looking for or where to look for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like in obviously this is episode like 103 of this podcast about, and I don't think I've ever had anyone kind of discuss or speak about projects in the same way that you do, and it's just, I don't know, it's just deeply fascinating, and I definitely, you can see from almost like from us chatting to Shang, you get a glimpse of that lens that you're looking at projects through, and it kind of reveals so much more that was kind of beneath the surface that you could otherwise lose without your kind of commentary. And again, I always think there is almost like scope for like almost like a you really re-release projects with added commentary, and that's where you can just go through and annotate everything of like, oh yeah, this layout piece or this was a bitch. It took me way too long to make this look right, or talking about like design choices.
I mean, if you want to get literal, like one of the supposed incantations took me 93 drafts.
Wow.
Yeah, people think that I'm more busy than I actually am, and people think that I'm working on so many things. Really, I'm just very methodical about the few things I interact with. Just because anything that I make really has to come from me, not anything else that I might be taking in. There's an author named Chuck Klossman who I deeply admire. He writes pop culture he writes pop culture essays. And in one of his essays, he talks about authenticity and how people seek out authenticity whenever they feel they're lacking any themselves. I can't make anything unless it's true to form me, which means that I expose myself quite a lot in everything I make, but it means that everything I do is more real.
Would you say a good chunk of that kind of like iterative process, like reaching the 90th or so like iterative like attempt of, is that kind of like a refining process of like reaching that point until it is that kind of as authentic as it could be for you?
For me, I take in a lot of media, and I have this theory that I'm never ever going to try and prove. I have, and I think it's true.
Yeah.
Where people are trained by the media they take in. And that's good and bad because you can learn a lot of stuff without having to go through the pain of learning certain things. Like, it's awful to learn that, hey, you can hurt your friends sometimes. It's much easier if you like watch Sesame Street and learn, oh, if you aren't careful, you can hurt your friends. The spell itself deals with, and I guess content notice for anybody triggered by talks about the afterlife or death, deals with you cast a spell in the body, and no one can like bring it. They can't reanimate it. They can't speak of dead with it. They can't consume it for nourishment. They can't they can't eat it and gain some of your knowledge or power. Mm-hmm. They can't take it over, but the person can't be resurrected anymore. I started the idea of that spell back in, I want to say, July, June. Mm-hmm. And then I lost my friend. And I'd constantly writing drafts, and it would just feel fake. Like I was writing something from a Hallmark card, and I couldn't stand that.
Yeah. I
can't abide that kind of filler in my work or in my life. I truly cannot. It's why I can't ever buy like a birthday card, because I fucking hate birthday cards.
Yeah, I mean, no one like, unless it's like has that kind of like essay, like personal note written on like the inside of the note, no one's ever really going to keep a birthday card.
Yeah, but in the final thing of it, trying to pull up the document really quick here.
No.
I figured out the phrasing of it. And for all these spells, we have like the casting time and range, components, duration, and we have a description of the spell itself. But we also have like a quick descriptive blurb, a whole paragraph describing what it's like to cast the spell. One of the lines in that paragraph, which took me so long to figure out, was you have to fit the shape of goodbye in what you say to them and hope it travels to them safely. I'm not going to find that in like a get well soon card.
No.
I'm not going to find anything like that in a Hallmark card. I had to pull something very, very real out for the spell, more real than I initially intended to. And when I say 93 drafts, I mean, like, sometimes I start writing a sentence and think that entire feeling, that entire emotion is false.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have that.
Wow. I know. I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of incredible. And I think even just hearing you speak, that authenticity just kind of like bleeds through.
Thank you.
But I'm kicking myself because I'm looking at the time and we've done it, Paladin. It's been an hour.
I mean, I got nothing else going on today. I'll go longer.
No, like I again, it's that case of where for the format, I've kept like I control the format. I'm in charge. But no, it's also getting like real late in my time zone. So what I will do is I will again, first of all, thank you so much for your time. It's been honestly an eye-opening pleasure. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me on.
No, but obviously before kind of leaving, I obviously want to kind of like give you the opportunity to kind of shout out some of the cool stuff you're currently working on, and kind of more importantly, where people can kind of stay up to date and follow you and hear about all the cool stuff on coming on the horizon.
Sure. This year I got a couple of projects going into crowdfunding. Not saying Kickstarter because they're doing some weird shit with the blockchain and we're exploring other options, but I got projects on the horizon. I generally don't talk about them until I start doing marketing for them, but if you want to find out what I'm up to, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram under HTTPaladin. And as I say on panels, please don't find me on Facebook. That's weird.
Yeah, that is that's a nice sentiment. But no, again, I will say thank you again because that's how thankful I am. I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. I have a new adventure out. The Tome of Silence, Astral Sound Devour Attack of. Sorry, it helps if I get the title right. The Tome of Silence, Attack of the Astral Sound Devourers, is out now, and there'll be a link to that in the description. So take a look if you like to come to some pulpy horror. Other than that, it goes to my favorite and final question of the podcast, which is Paladin. How do you end one?
Like this.